Hello, today on the Wanxiety podcast, we have the lovely Tayla, who is an associate publicist here in New York. And you've been here quite a while now in New York?
I have.
Yes.
I moved to New York in November of 2018 with no job, no money. And I just said, I have to be in New York to get the jobs that I want. Took a little bit of time, but eventually got there.
Can you tell me a little bit more why you decided to go and become a publicist?
Definitely. So I always knew that I wanted to work with books, and I currently am an associate publicist at a publishing company. And I always loved books. I always loved kind of meeting new people and being around people, but I wasn't quite sure how those two might intersect at all, if at all. And I was an English major in college, and I did a marketing and publicity internship at the academic publisher there. It was kind of like just the school academic press. And I really liked reaching out to the media to tell them about new books and to say, hey, like we have this new book coming out. You might like it. It's a local author. Maybe you want to interview them for your local newspaper. It was a very small scale thing, but it was really exciting. And I moved to New York because I had applied to some of these publishing jobs. I had kind of also applied all over. I had applied in the editorial department and also marketing, and I just kind of wanted to see what stuck, what was sticking or what stuck. But I had some great interviews, and ultimately, I didn't get the job, but it made me realize that maybe the editorial side wasn't quite for me. And what I did like was kind of being face to face in front of people and kind of promoting the book in that way, instead of working on, like the actual manuscript like you would if you were in editorial. Um, so after some trial and error and checking my ego a little bit, because even though I had done an internship in college, that internship does not equal a New York City internship. They're not the same thing. So
Yeah.
I was 25 and living in New York, and just decided, let me just apply for an internship. It was a marketing and publicity internship. And let's just see how it goes. And I ended up getting it. And I think they just liked that I was kind of just hungry to learn their systems, learn like the whole, how everything goes in a publishing company. And I was there for close to a year as an intern, and then COVID hit, and then after a period of time, my job was available in a full time capacity, and I was able to apply and interview, and then I was rehired full time, which was really fantastic. And I was at that first company for just about 3 years, and then decided, because it was marketing and publicity, and I can get a little bit more into that later, but um, most of the time, those are two different teams that do two different things. But in some publishing companies and some companies that are outside of publishing, they might group those into the same team. And I just decided that I wanted to stick with publicity, because even though I like social media and I like maybe the idea of creating content and the idea of making the social content, that wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. I wanted to be pitching, and I wanted to be trying to get my books in magazines and newspapers, and that's more on the publicity side. So I applied to my current job, which was also a publishing company, but a different one. And I got it, and I've been there for just over a year now, and I'm an associate publicist, and it's really lovely. And I work on a ton of books.
That's awesome. I mean, but you're such a people person. So,
I
like,
am.
I see you
Yeah.
like pitching, you're like
Yeah,
talking to, like, you're very good at talking to
absolutely.
people.
It
So,
is kind of a puzzle to see, okay, what does this one media outlet or this one person, what do they typically cover? What's their beat? And do any of my books fit into that? So it's kind of like a fun little like connect the dots kind of situation. Um, and I feel like I had something else. I work in children's books, which is a really great distinction.
Oh, so fun.
So I publicize books for kids ages 0 to 18. We run the whole spectrum from board books, picture books, to middle grade and YA. And that has been a really fun experience because it just brings me back to when I was a kid, reading everything I could get my hands on. Even reading before I could read, my mom and I would make up stories, and we would like make little books with Arthur stickers and different like other like character stickers from different sticker books. And then we'd make up our own stories. So it feels really great to be going from that to being like, I'm kind of like, my childhood self is kind of like, oh, cool, you did it.
That's awesome. And I know you're always reading books. Wait,
Oh
what's
yeah.
that series that everyone's reading right now? I think you were reading it too.
If it's probably the Court of Thorns and Roses, the Romantasy series. I know that's very popular.
I think so.
I did read that. It was good, and it was a really good stepping stone for like this whole other genre. You know, there's so much romantasy in the world. It's, you know, the romance plus the fantasy, and it's just absolutely, you know, blown up as a genre. And
Yeah.
Court of Thorns and Roses is a really great, for me, it was a really great entry point into that. But I love fantasy. I love historical fiction. I love nonfiction. I love reading about octopus, octopi, octopuses.
Like the actual animal? Like
yeah, the book The Soul of the Octopus is one of my favorite books. I love learning about how intelligent they are. I just want to befriend one. I just want
They
an
are
octopus
really
friend.
intelligent animals.
Or like my octopus teacher that's on Netflix.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Don't see it if you don't want to cry.
Oh, I think the last like fantasy novel, I think non-fiction was Twilight. No, fiction. That's
Twilight slaps. It's a great book.
I'm like non-fiction.
Yeah, the historical autobiography.
No, but like those books just like draw you in, and then like
Absolutely.
And it was around the same time, like 50 Shades of Grey, right? It was like around that same, not too long after.
I was gonna say, I think within 5 to 8 years, yeah, maybe.
Those books were really good, but that's I think the last books that were
what do you read
non-fiction.
when you're not working and
Tech
doing your
blogs.
podcast? Fun. No, I'm kidding.
About crypto.
I mean, that must be interesting.
Yeah, I read some self-help books. I read a lot of tarot books.
You have your book that you told me about, the King's book, or the
Oh, that's the love cards book.
The love cards
Everybody's
book.
a love card. Yeah.
Right.
But that's more like
That's like a reference book for you.
cartomancy, astrology for when I read for people and stuff like that. But yeah, so going back to being publicist.
Yeah, you got to read some fiction. You got to immerse yourself in a different world.
I used to. I had years that I read like 52 books a year.
Yeah.
Like I had one book a week I was reading, sometimes 2 books a week.
Yeah. And that is amazing, and just sometimes in different seasons of our life, that's just not sustainable.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's really important. I think it's also a much better habit to read before bed. Like right now, everybody's like on their phones constantly. And I am guilty of this too.
Same.
I had to delete TikTok because it is the devil.
You're so strong.
Yeah.
You're God's strongest warrior.
Yeah,
I wish I could.
To people about this the other day. Like somebody was telling me like, oh my God, I spent like 4 hours doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Is that they call it?
Yeah.
On TikTok. And I'm like, do you know how many things you could have done in 4 hours? Like,
but it really, like, it's a time suck, and I have a limit on social media on my phones. You know how many times a day I press ignore limit? The 45 minutes for TikTok that I have allotted per day goes by so quickly. And the TikTok videos are so long now. I want to watch my video essays.
That's a long time to spend on TikTok. So going back to being a publicist, what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, so I am usually at any given point during the season juggling about 4 to 5 different books. And you know, we have about 30 books that we each work on per season. So that would be like the fall season or the spring season. And so per month I could have about 4 to 7 books to work on. And so it's really just seeing like, have I pitched all of these authors? Have I, you know, followed up with the media, because, you know, things get lost very quickly in the inbox. So kind of making sure that loose ends are tied there. If you need to kind of like close the loop, as they say, with a media outlet, I'm pitching them, the authors, to different festivals or conferences. And we kind of split that up within our team too. But, we just want to make sure that our authors are getting to, the correct audiences. And sometimes that means, cool, like your book would be great at Comic-Con, so we're going to bring you to Comic-Con. Or there's this literary festival in Texas that like everyone loves your book in Texas. Like, let's bring you there. So it's kind of doing a lot of the boring grunt work of checking your inbox, but then also kind of like thinking big picture too about like, okay, and in the grand scheme of this book's life, where am I? Have I pitched it to the right places? Am I, doing all the right things for it? And then on the micro level too, just being like, okay, I need to get this particular set of pages to this media outlet because they want to sample some of the chapter. It is very exciting, but sometimes it can get a little overwhelming. But I do like it because every day is different. And your my work day depends on like where in the season we are. Like if we're in the middle of the season, we're juggling multiple author tours, and you have to make sure their itineraries are up to date and make sure that if they're going to, like I said, one of those festivals, they have their books there on time. Can you tell that like that's where I am with my brain right now, that we're in the middle of the season and I'm like, oh shoot, I have to make sure that the books are there.
I mean, it sounds like very fun and creative also, and like
I surprisingly there is a lot of creativity involved. I think when people think about working in publishing, they think about the editorial aspect because that's what I thought of when I first started working. They think, oh, like, you want to be an editor and like that's the only way you can really be creative, or you design the covers for books and that's the only way you can be creative. But I'm creative every day when I'm pitching. I got to make sure that the subject line of the email hooks people. I got to make sure it's like eye-catching but also not like clickbaity. So that way they know that it comes from an actual person and not a bot. And then my email, like when I pitch them, it has to be flashy and catchy and give them as much information as they need in those first 1 or 2 paragraphs, because you don't want to waste anyone's time.
Yeah.
But it's a form of creativity that I've really come to enjoy.
That's lovely. So you did mention like sometimes it's overwhelming. Is there anything you do? I mean,
would you say that I have
fast
Wanxiety?
I'm not telling me, do you have Wanxiety? I feel
sometimes
like
I do.
Everyone has anxiety.
Yeah.
How do you stay balanced, like in such because it's a fast-paced environment?
For sure.
Right?
It's hard staying balanced. It definitely can be hard, and publishing is unique, but also not as unique as you would think. That constantly, people are understaffed. Teams are understaffed. The resources are not allocated properly. And it's hard to feel balanced if you know that you have, a really kick-ass team. But if you just had 2 more people in your kick-ass team, like you could do even better. But I think all that being said, I think, the specific ways that I stay balanced, I try to not have my notifications on my email, or we use Teams, not Slack. So I try to keep those notifications off unless there's a week where I know that I need to kind of be on call more. Say if like an author is doing a media tour or something. But I try to keep that hard work-life balance of, okay, I'm not going to check my email on the weekends. It's hard, but I do try to stick to it. And, I think I was going to say something else too. Try to just like, I've been getting better at knowing that like not every little thing matters. Don't sweat the small stuff. Like, it's a common saying for a reason. Really don't sweat the small stuff, and try to let things like roll off me a little bit more and just be like, okay, It's not the end of the world. Like it's something that's happening, but it's fixable, or it's something that we can improvise and work around, or that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
tough in every industry, you know?
yeah, for sure. And actually, like going back to earlier when we were talking about social media, with like social media, everybody's just like advertising on there,
Yeah.
publishing on there. Like,
Yeah.
how has the PR landscape changed because of social media?
I was just talking to my boss about this the other day. Is that, we are trying, at least in our team, we are really trying to think about social media when we're pitching and when we're securing these interviews, for any sort of online outlet. If it's like a newspaper or a magazine, they're going to have a social media page. So we as publicists are really good at going, okay, it's a book about nature, so we are going to send it to the National Geographic. And we get the interview National Geographic, and that's really, really good. But then maybe going the next step and saying, hey, National Geographic, don't you have a social media page that, like, could we possibly get in touch with the social media people to then make sure that this awesome article is not only viewed by the people who just go on the National Geographic website, but also the social media pages. And that was something that I didn't really think about until now, because, you think about social media and, that's marketing that does that.
Yeah.
But it's not always marketing. And I think kind of thinking about how we can help out our teammates that are in marketing. So thinking about how, I'm doing my job in publicity, but then how can I kind of like broaden the scope a little bit to then make sure that it includes something outside of my wheelhouse is, I think, very valuable. And I know that when I look at articles online, maybe it's the New Yorker, maybe it's like, whatever magazine it is, I'm seeing it from the social media page.
Yeah.
It's the post. And then they say, go to the link in bio to read the article. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to go read the article. And I think that's a really key part of publicity that I haven't really thought about until now. Because it's not our marketing team who's getting that up there. We can certainly tell them, hey, this article is going live. If they tag us on social media, like, let's make sure we repost or collaborate or, those things. But it's kind of like bridging that gap between like, how did I secure the interview? Then how do I go the next step to make sure that like even more people can see it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to leverage social media, right? Because it's so big nowadays. So much is goes through social media, and that's how people find their content.
So rapidly.
Yeah, but people find their content that way. And like, I see all my news now on Instagram.
Yes, absolutely. For better or for worse, that's how I'm getting my news. I'm not paying for a cable subscription. I'm,
Wait, those things still exist?
I guess so.
I know. I mean, I still read like Daily Mail sometimes because
I have the New York Times app.
Yeah,
that I look at sometimes. New York
Times cooking.
I look at the cooking a lot more and the games.
Oh wait, everybody's always telling me about these crossword puzzles.
These newfangled things, the crossword puzzles. No, I mean, we're a big crossword family household.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. But it's like a nice way to kind of engage the brain.
Yeah, but it's every day, right? They have one.
They do. They have a big one and they have a mini one.
Maybe I'll start checking it out. It might do me good.
The mini is really nice. That's how I started, and it takes you like a minute and a half.
And now you do the big one instead.
And now I try to do the big one, and then I kind of depends on the day. I'm really good at Mondays, and I don't even look at Fridays because they get harder throughout the week.
Oh, so
yeah. So maybe start with Mondays.
I would definitely start with a smaller one. How about that? So what kind of advice would you give to our listeners who are considering a career in publicity or advertising, editorial?
Wow. I think the advice that I would give to people who want to be in publicity, be a publicist, and be a publicist in publishing specifically, is you just have to be open to putting yourself out there. I'm sure you hear that. I'm sure listeners hear that all the time, but you just have to be open to putting yourself out there and accepting new experiences and knowing that it might feel like a slog. It might feel like a grind. And that doesn't mean overwork yourself and, don't do work and not get compensated for it. But there's a lot of stuff that you have to do as a publicist, like take the errand to go and drop off books at these different places, like say okay to meeting with a media outlet for coffee, put yourself out there, because it just will open like to a world of opportunities. I really love books and I really love people, and I found a way to merge those two loves of mine. And I think if you feel similarly, then you could absolutely try Publicity. Publishing in general is kind of a beast to get into, just in the sense that it's competitive, but networking events are really, really helpful, and everyone is, for the most part, I think, trying to help everyone else succeed. And if you meet someone at like a networking happy hour and you want to like get their card, if people still give out cards, or like swap contact info, it's just like it's a great thing to do. It might seem overdone, it might seem cliche, but I think it'll go a long way.
Oh, networking is so important.
Networking is the only thing I'm good at. Get me in a room with people with a glass of wine, okay.
You're so good at many other things. I guess that's one last question. What is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
You didn't prepare me for that question.
I know, I did not. Sorry.
Piece of advice I would give my younger self: don't stress. Like, I was so stressed that because, the perfect job wasn't available to me at that right moment, it meant that it would never happen. But I just like kept my nose down and just like applied. But then I think as I'm saying that, I should also tell my younger self to like breathe a little bit more and get out there and say yes to like, doing the fun activity with your friends, even if you're supposed to be applying. Life is all about balance. We talked about balance earlier.
Yes.
And just know that like I could tell myself that if I just stop trying to control the outcome, then it's going to work and it's going to be fine. And I'm going to be sitting here one day with my lovely friend Juicy having this conversation about this job that when I was 10 years old, I thought was such a cool job.
Yeah, and you have it now.
And I have it now.
See?
And now I'm like, oh, now I got to clock into my job. Now I got to answer emails. Like, it's not glamorous, but it's...
But you love it.
Yeah. And younger Tayla is really, really excited that I'm here right now. So that's really
awesome
great.
To hear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for doing this. This is so amazing to learn more about like what you do.
Absolutely.
And, like, what a publicist
I'm
does.
sure I missed some things, but thank you so much for having me.
No, it's amazing because I love books, and I honestly grew up like always reading. Like I was torn between wanting to be a lawyer and a journalist.
Wow.
So for me, like reading, if you
I could see you as both.
Yep. Yes. If you ask my mom, I always had a book in my hand, and I was always writing or reading.
Me
so,
too.
yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thank you.
How did that?